Good evening and welcome to Channel 30's 6 o'clock news. We're your #1 source for reliable, up-to-date news. Thanks for tuning in. As all of our viewers should know, we are in the middle of World War II. For those of you who have missed our previous broadcast, Lucian Zerli will be reminding us of why we entered the war. Here he is with the events of Pearl Harbor.
Thanks, Aaron. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor with their Air Force. They inflicted major damage on the aircraft and battleships stationed there. Almost the entire battleship fleet was sunk or is now inoperable. These Japanese bombers caused around 3,000 casualties of American personnel. Thankfully, 3 of our best aircraft carriers were not in the harbor and have remained unharmed. The events of this day were devastating to America and its people, and we will remember. The Senate and the House were only 1 vote short of unanimity for declaring war. We can thank President Franklin D. Roosevelt's infamous speech for giving us this speedy decision. This speech will be remembered for years to come. Let us remind ourselves of his powerful words.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. Indeed, 1 hour after Japanese air squadrons had commenced bombing in the American island of Oahu, the Japanese ambassador to the United States and his colleague delivered to our Secretary of State a formal reply to a recent American message. Japan has therefore undertaken a surprise offensive extending throughout the Pacific area. The facts of yesterday and today speak for themselves. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God.
Some might question why the Japanese took such outrageous methods of dealing with us. They refused to accept any deals of trade or compromise with us. They wouldn't settle for anything less than their way, so they bombed us and caused this awful tragedy, in order to make sure that their lives are not worthless in this fight and win the war. Back to you, Aaron.
Thank you for that empowering ending, Lucian. Now it's time for our weather report. Here's Ian Fletcher with the forecast.
Be wary, western United States citizens, as there's a large storm coming from the west, originating in Japan, dubbed the Rising Sun. Who names these things? I don't know. These massive beasts is slowly wreaking havoc upon island nations, already devastating places like Guam, Wake, the Philippines, Hong Kong, even though that's part of the mainland, the Dutch West Indies, and so forth. Although originally thought to be going southward towards Australia, it suddenly was pushed back in the Coral Sea. Lucky too, as we had a large fleet of aircraft carriers stationed there, even though it's a damn reef. This is where the report gets strange, however, like it wasn't already strange, but whatever. Now, another hurricane has been forming down near Hawaii, dubbed Chester. This one is going in the opposite direction toward where rising sun is coming from. It's been predicted that the two are going to collide at the area called Midway. Depending on how lucky we are, rising sun is either going to tear through Chester and head onto California, or Chester is going to break through the rising sun and continue onwards. Hopefully Chester does win this battle, and it will be weakened and not do as much damage in its direction. It would probably hop from island to island, such as the Marianas, I don't know how you spell that one, the Philippines, and Okinawa. And maybe it'll reach Tokyo. In other weather news, earthquakes are somehow appearing in an area called Burma, devastating our trade routes, China, meaning we can only give them supplies through airdrops now. Back to you, Aaron.
Up next is our economic segment. Our economic expert, Josh Tyler, has information on how our dear country's industry has been faring in the war.
Hello everybody, and thanks Aaron. Believe it or not, this war has actually been good for us as of late. National unity is at an all-time high, and Roosevelt's Doctor Win the War policy is turning all of America's efforts into winning the war. It's proving very well for this country. Industry is also faring well, and the amount of munitions is being made is astonishing. 40 billion bullets, 300,000 aircraft, 76,000 ships, 86,000 tanks, and 2.6 million machine guns have been created as of now, a staggering amount. Factors like the War Production Board taking over and the halting of non-essential items could contribute toward this output. There was also the Smith-Connolly Anti-Strike Act that allowed for the federal government to seize tied-up industries, and the fact that it's also a federal offense to strike at federal industries definitely helped out with this war effort. There's also the growing of labor unions happening in our country. Over the course of the last few years, membership has grown by 3 million names. Farmers are upping their production as well, even though many of them are going to the war, joining the 15 million souls who are already there. There are some negatives to this whole ordeal, however. Our national debt is nearing $275 billion, much larger than from before the war, which was $16 billion. There is also an inflammatory spike in currency, as full employment tends to do. This entire war is also very expensive, as by the end of the war, it is costing us $10 million every hour. And just in 1942, we spent $100 billion on war. As more information is being analyzed and tested, Channel 30 News will always be here to update you.
Thank you for enlightening us all on the state of the nation, Josh. Once again, we are going to do a short recap of some events from the war. Anyone unsure of what's been going on recently should pay very close attention.
I'm sure we all remember the U-boat scare in the early 40s. They were sinking all of our merchant ships, but we just kept them sailing, as the saying goes. It wasn't until a crack team of British codebreakers finally got through those damn Nazi Enigma codes that we figured out where they were located and destroyed them. Then there was Italy. Our friends the Soviets needed a new front of war to relieve the pressure on them. And so we gave it to them. After General Eisenhower gained ground in North Africa, a small army was sent to southern Italy. Sicily has been captured in August of 1943, basically ending Italy's reign of, well, nothing really, and stopping Mussolini. Recently, however, reports of us capturing the city of Rome have been coming in, with the date of June 4th, 1944. Speaking of June, we have some good news to behold. Operation Overlord, also known as D-Day, has been a success. After many British, American, Canadian, and other European forces had gathered on the British Isle on June 4th, 1944, they all stormed the beaches of Normandy. It was a tough fight, but they made it, giving us a foothold for a massive new theater of war. Allied forces have been slowly making their ways toward Berlin. That's all for now, but we'll be back with more developments soon.
Not only am I an economist, I'm also an expert in politics as well. The election in 1944 was a doozy, as it happened right after D-Day. The Republicans nominated that young, pesky Thomas Dewey as their candidate, standing upon a platform of an unstinted prosecution of the war and the creation of a new international organization to preserve the peace. I can't agree on that last part. The Democrats, however, nominated our current president, The great Franklin Roosevelt, FDR. Sorry to say, but the vice president was also a big issue in the case of Roosevelt. As an old man with a lot of stress, he might not make it to the presidency. Although many wanted Henry Wallace, a young, unknown man named Harry Truman took the position instead. Soon after, FDR won the race with 432 electoral votes, and Dewey only got 99. A good thing too, as a change of leadership in the middle of a war was not ideal. Keep on kicking, Roosevelt.
That was very, enlightening. Thank you, Josh. As we near the end of the war, our forces are amassing upon Berlin. Lucian has all the facts for you, old news and recent developments, coming up soon.
The time has almost come as our forces have slowly made their way across Europe. American bombers have decimated enemy soil, and Soviet battles in the east have definitely helped Allied forces in the west have less resistance. Although by December 1944, Germany was barely standing, the old Führer did not have one more card up his sleeve. Titled the Battle of the Bulge, Germany sent the last of its amassed men towards a weak point in the Allied line, attempted to reach the supply city of Antwerp. Allied forces were surprised at first, but he ultimately failed after 11 days at Bastogne by the 101st Airborne Division and their reinforcements. When Allied forces stationed there were asked to surrender, their commanding officer, Brigadier General A.C. Micallef, responded with only nuts. The Germans were definitely nuts. This, however, lead us to where our latest reports have been received from. Americans were very lucky and somehow found an undestroyed bridge across the Rhine. Soon after, they discovered two things. One, Russian forces and everyone rejoiced together. Two, Jewish concentration camps, which did not bode well for the Germans there. Concentration camps were places where Germans rounded up Jewish people and put them in horrible conditions. Full reports have not come in, but the death toll is high, and the conditions there seem horrible from some of the pictures we've seen. In some better news, Allied forces are attacking Berlin as we speak, and we estimate Germany shall fall by the end of April. Perhaps the Germans will surrender soon after. Maybe May 7th.
I've just received breaking news. We're very sad to say, but President Franklin Roosevelt has just passed away. While trying to relieve tension, relaxing on a beach in Georgia, the stress-worn man had a massive cerebral hemorrhage and is no longer with us. Let it be known that on April 12, 1945, a great man has passed away. We'll inform you more as information comes about Washington, but Vice President Truman will soon be becoming President Truman. Now let's get back to our scheduled programming by welcoming our special guest, J. Robert Oppenheimer. Hello everyone, I'd like you to meet our special guest, J. Robert Oppenheimer. So, for our guests that don't know, could you please elaborate on who you are?
Thank you for having me here, Aaron. I'm a theoretical physicist, and I'm leading the Manhattan Project with my colleague, General Leslie Groves. The Manhattan Project is a secretive project that has been running since about 1939, and our goal is to produce a very special something. But now that we've achieved our goal, clearance has been given to us to elaborate on what we've done.
So, Oppenheimer, what have you and your team actually done?
I won't get into the specifics as we could be here for hours, as it is all very complicated. But our main goal is to create an atom bomb that we could use to end the war. The little boy and our second one, Fat Man, these bombs are going to be expected to drop very soon if Japan refuses to surrender.
How devastating are these bombs?
Estimates predict that if we, say, drop these bombs on the cities of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, about 80,000 lives and 187,000 lives will be lost, respectively.
But that's horrible. How could we let something like that happen?
It was either BISC or risk our army and people on a beach assault against Japan. Personally, I think we'd be saving more lives.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Mr. Oppenheimer.